Okay, so let me introduce our first speaker, which I'm really excited about this conversation. I was casting around months and months ago for possible speakers for this conference, and David Kirkpatrick, who's the author of The Facebook Effect, suggested strongly that I contact Vanessa Miemis, which I did. I'm very happy that Vanessa's joined us. Vanessa is a writer and digital ethnographer exploring how social media is transforming communication, collaboration, and commerce in a network society. She's currently executive director for Contact, and you'll hear a lot about the Contact Summit in a few minutes, a participatory festival that highlights opportunities for new forms of peer-to-peer culture, governance, and collective action. Her recent projects include The Future of Facebook, a 6-part video series, and Open Foresight, a methodology for engaging experts and the public to create collaborative visions of the future together. She authors the very interesting blog Emergent by Design. So what's going to happen now is that Vanessa and I are going to chat, and you're free to listen in. Actually, sooner than later, I'm sure Vanessa would love to hear your questions and comments. And I said to Vanessa at breakfast, as she was telling me something about what she was doing, that we would have to slow this down at least by half for most of our audience to get what she's trying to say. And so you will have questions. Feel free to raise your hand when you do, okay? So you wanted to start off, Vanessa, with a little bit about what you're doing these days, right?
Yes.
Maybe about Contact Summit?
Sure.
Great.
So, I usually have like a script and notes in front of me, so this is like my first time just speaking, so bear with me if I kind of blank out. But I thought I'd just do a brief intro of how I got to where I am now with my interest in social media, and just some of the insights that I've gotten from it. And then just we can have a conversation and hopefully just an interactive conversation. So this all kind of started for me in 2009, not that long ago. I decided to go back to school to get a master's in media studies down at the New School in New York City. And it's really a lot about social theory and media theory and communications. How does this shape our sense of self and our representation within the world? So I decided I wanted to do that because I had this feeling that there's something that's really interesting about social media, and I wasn't really sure what it was, but it felt really big and transformative. And if you kind of do a survey of like the history of the world, we go through these huge transformations and disruptions when there's these new communication technologies that are introduced. So whether it's the printing press or the telegraph or the radio, now the web, it kind of changes the way that we're able to live and to be. So I wanted to explore more about that. So I decided to just start a blog and start a Twitter account and just document what I was learning and in the courses and putting it out there to the public and just kind of see what happened. I didn't really have any agenda. I didn't know what was going to happen, and it's been completely transformative in my life. I couldn't have predicted it, but I really allowed myself to get embedded and kind of fall down the rabbit hole. So I guess I'll just say the three kind of insights that I gained as far as like what it's all about for me are that it's a tool that can be like a personal learning environment, that it's a training ground for building trust and engaging in generative dialogue, and it's kind of like this deconstruction, reconstruction zone for personal and group identity. So I'll just kind of just briefly state what I mean by that, and then you can ask me whatever you want. So in terms of a personal learning environment, so I have my blog and just the ability to kind of express myself out to the public is this kind of amazing thing. I started the Twitter account, and as of now, I think there's 100 million active users a month on Twitter. When you first join, there's nobody there. You have to start following people in order to see people's streams. And so when I started the Twitter account, I kind of was like, well, what do I really want to know what's interesting. And there's really no like guidelines of how to use Twitter. It's just a channel. You do it however you want. And there's a lot of just kind of junk out there and spam and marketing. But there's a lot of really actually interesting people who are curators of content and experts in their field that really help to direct your learning experience. And so I kind of went in there with the question of what do I want to know, and how do I survey this like large span of industries and domains. And so following people within the business field who were looking at organizational change and social learning, and looking at educators, how they were using social media, technologists, thought leaders, authors, all these kind of people. And I mean, it's kind of amazing that everyone's like pretty accessible. You can tweet to them, ask them a question directly, and they'll actually respond to you. I mean, I've had the opportunity to meet the people that I thought were, my idols, authors that are on my shelf are, my Twitter friends, and, we don't have tons of conversations, but they'll respond. It's kind of amazing. And the other interesting thing about Twitter, and I guess, Facebook too, and a lot of these social network experiences is, it's all kind of being done in the public, and so you can see who other people are following, like who their network is, who they're retweeting, or who they're following. And so it kind of gives you an idea of where other people are learning from. So, depending on I guess like how deep you want to get into it, you can kind of survey other people's learning environments as well. So now I have like this, what I call like an environmental scanning. When I go onto Twitter, I have all these different lists of different kinds of groups of people, and they're all the curators of content for me. So I don't have to go to 50 different blogs. I can go to the 5 experts who are in that domain area, and they're retweeting the best articles from those places. And so it's just like a really interesting way to have this focused learning experience. The second thing in terms of being like a training ground for trust building. So, trust building and generative dialogue. I guess the interesting thing for me there is that, you're in this public space, and you're kind of demonstrating behavior, and people are able to see what you're doing and kind of respond. And it's like how when I think about the ways that we learn, I mean, you can read something in a book and absorb it. Or you can like directly experience it, and you can kind of learn from others and lead by example. So what I found on my blog is I would write these very kind of exploratory things of my own learning experience, and also reveal a lot of intimate details about myself, about things that I was thinking about, being very vulnerable, and having people respond to me in that space, like in the comments section of the blog, and then me responding to them. And sometimes people would leave a comment that was nasty or cruel or whatever, but the way that I would respond to that then was like this open, kind of this open learning experience for everyone of, well, how do you handle attacks, or how do you really engage with someone in a way that is like not taking it personally and not retaliating, but rather saying, okay, I understand this is what you're saying, and this is your opinion, and here's how I feel about it. And again, having this kind of really weird experience where it was able to have like a publicly documented space where we could be building trust because we were being vulnerable and intimate with our details about each other. So I guess you can probably ask me more questions about that to kind of get into details of what I mean. And then the final thing is just this this amazing space for understanding our own identity. And I feel like I've been through both like these peak experiences of like epiphany, and also really existential crisis, in allowing myself to get totally immersed in taking down the boundaries of the self and just kind of putting it out there and seeing what that means. It's weird. Like the web for me is like this simulation zone. Normally that's typing just in your head where you're able to experiment and play with persona and identity and questions, and you have all these different people kind of in your mind, and then the web is this ability to kind of externalize that and put it out there, and then others are able to engage with that. And so the more I kind of revealed layers of myself that got closer and closer to whatever a true self kind of is, the more other minds in this hyper-connected space could interact with that and reveal their selves to me, and things that I thought that were so unique and individual and personal that really represented me. I found that others experience those same things too, and they have those same questions about identity. And for me, it's sometimes very disruptive, because it was like, well, where then do we end as individuals, and where does the beginning of another person begin? Because there's really so many similarities when we're just kind of like in this mind space. So yeah, also just it's been very interesting in understanding the self and realizing, I guess, how many layers of persona that we do apply to ourselves in the real world, and this kind of changed my experience of how I interact with others now, like in real life. So those are kind of my 3 areas of social media experience. But I guess ask me things that are applicable to your.
Well, my association was to the fact that we have these community meetings here on a daily basis, and sometimes interactions occur that have a lot of tension in them or can look nasty, but they're occurring in a public space where it can be sorted out. And it sounds like you're saying that's your experience of this aspect of the web, which is it's a communal space, which people sometimes, I suppose, forget, actually. But it really is that, and you can sort things out publicly.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess when I first kind of went online, I saw it as a destination. You go to web pages, you go to commerce sites, there's this whole kind of commercial web, and you just kind of go there and you do your thing online, and then you get offline. And now with the rise of this kind of more social web, I no longer see the web as this destination, but it's an interface. It's really just a tool, a communication tool that's connecting people. And it's very obvious, but I mean, it was like a revelation for me at some point when I really internalized that these little screen names and avatars are actual human beings on the other side. And I think that, at least what I found, is that there are, seemingly millions of people, if not all of us, who are really yearning for human connection and to feel like we have other people that can resonate with what's going on with us inside. And for whatever reason, in the real world, a lot of times we can be surrounded by people but feel isolated, yeah, and feel like, how do I establish a bond with these people? Where I found, like, in this online space, again, like the training ground aspect, the simulation, where it's not as scary because it's just a screen name, and what do I really care? It's not like I have to sit and look in your eyes as I tell you something about myself. I can just kind of interact with you, but you do get the chance to kind of go there, mm-hmm, and take risks and extend yourself out. And where I thought that I would have gotten burned, I actually grew.
I have a feeling that what you just said, you used to think of it as a destination, but now it's simply a means of communication. I have a feeling that's an important thing for us to take in. But when we had our conversation a while back, you told me that it's something about how people were drawn to you and your communication, and there was a certain gender bias in that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's been interesting. I've somehow become this like online confidant for all these various men in the world. And I think, on my blog, I really write about all kinds of different things that I think is probably pretty rare, because usually people who have an online space where they've established themselves, they craft a certain persona, and they want to present as an expert in something, and that's what they talk about. Where I treat my blog as really me, emergent by design. When I decided that name, is more like the space that I'm creating for me to be that thing. You know, this is a place where I'm going to really put myself out there, and
You're going to emerge by
yeah,
design.
I'm going to intentionally expand my consciousness and myself, and let others participate in that process if they want to. And so, you know, one day I'll write a post that will get cross-posted on CNN.com or Forbes, where I also blog, and it's about something about technology or the future of money or something that's like serious. You know, and other posts I've written have been the super personal intimacies of the stories of what happened to me psychologically when I lost my virginity, or watching my father beat my mother, or different things that I experienced throughout my life and in my relationships, and things that define the kind of personal narrative of my life. I mean, I've been totally transparent about that stuff. And I mean, I don't know how many people really do that. And so, but I mean, it creates an intimate space where people have felt very comfortable with kind of revealing themselves to me too, because I did it first, and so it must be okay. And I mean, I've had these, you know, different people. I mean, some who are like well recognized people, at least like within like the technology world, which is kind of my space, who, you know, what started with just like the blog and Twitter then goes into these back channels of Skype chat and Gmail chat and just, you know, these one-on-one conversations where, you know, they'll say, you know, I was really just so moved by that post, and, you know, it really reminded me of, you know, this thing that I experienced. I mean, I've, you know, had, you know, men tell me about how they were raped by the babysitter, male babysitter, you know, and another guy telling me about how, you know, he would cut himself, you know, because of all these things, and how his, you know, father would beat, you know, the hell out of him. And I mean, at first I was like, oh my God, you know, why are these people telling me this? Like, who am I to be the receiver of this information? I'm not really sure what to do about this. But I mean, they're not asking me for advice. They're not looking to have, you know, me be a therapist, but it really seemed like these people have absolutely no outlets to say this stuff. Maybe there's a stigma to seek help from professionally. In a lot of these cases, you know, they're like, you know more about me now and my true self than my wife or my closest companion. Like, I don't feel comfortable even telling them about these stories. These are the dirty secrets of my past that are my baggage, but it's somehow like I trust you to hold this space and to just let me say it and put it out there.
And what do you say in response?
I mean, I empathize with you. I mean, because I've already told so many of my own stories, you know, a lot of them are their versions of that story, or their really personal things, and, you know, I don't really say much. I mean, there's no judgment. There's no, oh, you should really do something about that. But I just found for myself, like, being able to. I feel like we all have so many stories in our mind of who we are, and we revisit a lot of these stories constantly, and the things that the way that we behave in the world and the way that we respond to a lot of things are kind of like these programs that we reenact these same things over and over again. We tell ourselves these stories of like, well, because of this, now this, and like, this is the way I'm going to respond to this because that's how I did before. Or, you know, you kind of have this, again, this like kind of narrative. And what I found for myself that's really been liberating is when you can kind of like just, instead of that being the secret story that's kind of going on in your head, when you can kind of externalize it and tell it and you know, put it out there where you know, you're reading it and you're like, okay, that's that story. I mean, pretty soon it's like you're able to remove yourself from the story and you realize it's a story, you know, and you can grow past it. And you're like, you know, I started to ask myself, like, does this story serve me anymore? You know, like, is this my poor me story that I'm going to use as my crutch for me to like not do something or not move past? And I found that it's been a huge healing to be able to just put that out there and say, yeah, that is what it is, or that is what happened, and so what? You know, like that's now part of a past narrative that I don't need to hold me back from. You know, the future that I'm establishing.
Yeah. And, you know, you mentioned that these kinds of stories are secret stories for most people, but you decided to emerge by design. So how did you get there? How did you get to the place of having the courage to take that risk?
I don't know. I guess I I mean, I just really pushed the boundaries of what's okay to kind of put out there. And I mean, it's really scary. It's one thing to even tell a friend about these things, but then to say it to everybody, the public, the world permanently, where it's, it's never going to be, unless they change the rules, it's never going to be erased. And that stuff that's out there is out there. Even if I delete my blog, it's in the Internet Archive. But again, it was just kind of like, why should I be ashamed of the truth? Am I going to be punished for my vulnerabilities and these things that we perceive as weaknesses? We're kind of taught, like, you don't share these things because, I need to present this powerful, invincible kind of part to the world.
Image.
Yeah, and it seems like the more I actually have, close relationships and intimacies with people, the more you find that nobody really seems to know what's going on. We're all in this together. We're all kind of just figuring out, like, what the heck are we doing here? We have all these kind of letters after our names and titles and experiences and, stories. But at the end of the day, it's like, who am I? How do I be happy? At the end of the day, a big part of it too, I guess, was kind of embracing mortality. I've lost both my parents. My mom died 6 years ago now, right after she had turned 50. She died of ovarian cancer. I was there holding her hand when she passed. And then just 2 years later, my father suddenly died of a heart attack at 54. And so, I was, in my mid-20s, and my whole perception of reality was completely disrupted. And that safety net of, these are people that are going to walk me down the aisle and see my, grandchildren and all this stuff. I mean, that just went away. And so now it's just like, me and my younger brother. And it's, that was, I guess, a personal existential crisis, and also, potential for growth to kind of realize that we do have mortality. And so why am I holding myself back? At the end of the day, I'm going to die. Like, we are all just going to die. And so why am I so scared to live?
There was a cartoon in the New Yorker this week. You may have seen it. It's a minister presiding over a funeral, and the caption says, "Now we will do something like #number Jerry's dead." And I thought, I better learn what a hashtag is fast. But you also told me about I think you called it the dark side of all this for you, the way in which a person can get caught up. And it reminded me of the online-offline moment that I just described in my talk. There was a conflict for you between online life and offline life. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, I guess just in general in real life, I was always more of a closed person or a loner and in my own head, introverted. And it's always been difficult for me to make new relationships. It's like, how do you, I moved to New York a couple of years ago, and, I just felt so scared. And I'm like, how do you meet new people in a new place? Like, what do you do? Where do you go? How do I put myself out there? How do I introduce myself? Like, I don't know how to do this. And how do I relate to people? And, I have all kinds of things that are, I'm very in my own little technology niche, which for most normal people, they kind of, they don't get it. Like social media still for a lot of people is something that, is, I mean, I feel like I'm an alien living in the future, and it's like, I don't even know how to talk to normal people who are talking about the everyday things. I mean, here I am talking about, how technology is going to transform human life into being some sort of a, social organism, multi-connected global brain. People are very confused by that. So,
not to mention unnerved.
Yeah. And, then I go into my online space where, of course, people thinking about the future of technology are going to be found online. And I'm, engaging in these, amazing conversations about this stuff. And I feel like I found my tribe, this globally distributed tribe. And I have, my people. And here we all are in this online space, and they understand me. And we're, we build this trust, and we go deeper and deeper with one another. And, it doesn't matter the sex, the age, the gender, the political affiliate. I mean, nothing. In this hyper-connected space, we're just minds that are kind of interwoven. And it's like you kind of really get to this weird space of, is this what reality is, where, I am able to just go into this sphere and I can ping somebody and reveal something or ask a question or express an emotion, and there they are to give some sort of a support, feedback, resource, anything. But then here I am in the real world where I'm surrounded by people and here I am looking at this room of people. I don't know, I have no way of knowing very quickly anything about you, what you're interested in. I can't, I wish I had my augmented reality glasses where I could, look at you and very quickly see your blog and look at all your interests and very quickly kind of discern, okay, well, this is what this guy's about. He's into wind sailing. He likes to write about, this thing. He's into, World of Warcraft. Whatever. He's loves Kung Fu. Whatever. So, okay, now I at least have something that I can attach to make a connection and say, oh, I saw you checked in yesterday on Foursquare over at the credit union and that you closed down your Chase account. I guess you're following the Occupy Wall Street thing and how today's bank transferred. I can start a conversation. So, and I think that's actually the world we are moving to, where all this stuff that's happening in the online world is going to move to the offline world. That dissolution is going to happen, and we already have the smartphones where we can kind of check in, and they already have these software platforms that offer these augmented reality overlays where you just hold up your phone to the world and it'll tell you, like, this this place is for sale and here's what it costs, and this restaurant has these reviews from Yelp, and it's all becoming really interconnected. So I don't know what that's going to mean for humanity at that point. I think I kind of trailed off into some other land of discussion. I'm not sure.
Your use of the word tribe reminded me of how you describe yourself, digital ethnographer. Yeah. Tell us about ethnography and you.
Well, people ask me, what do you do? And I have no idea how to really answer that question, or who I am. And it's like, again, like saying that I feel like I'm, from the future. How do you...
You're an anthropologist of the future.
Yeah, here I am thinking about, what happens when, in addition to the physical meat space reality, you have a simulated digital version. I think, again, the web is our ability to simulate the world, and we're getting more and more advanced technologies to allow us to do that. Where you'll have Google Earth, and everything that's going on in the world will also have this digital representation, not just physical things and these data visualizations, but ourself, our social networks, our past experiences, all this kind of stuff. And so I just think I think we're evolving in many ways as a species, potentially evolving. For many people, it's very disruptive, and I've already gone through many of these disruptions, and I'm a lot more comfortable now with kind of living in uncertainty and adaptability. And as these new social technologies keep coming out and present you with new ways to potentially interact, it keeps shifting what you are. And I'm okay with that. But a lot of people aren't.
But you also had to manage your boundaries.
Yeah, I've definitely pulled back. I did kind of see how far can I go with this kind of like exposing everything thing, and there's definitely a need and a reason for boundaries. Besides feeling like this Wildcat 2030 is closer to me than my husband, which is like, why is this avatar that's just a picture of a disc, not even a human face, I feel more connected to than I do to, family members. That there's something that's dangerous about that, where, this online space becomes more of a reality. So, I've pulled back now, and some boundaries have to be established, and you only have so much time and attention. Or I guess maybe those are the most valuable things that we have, are our time and attention. You can't give it to everyone. You get into these online spaces and people just kind of flock to you. It's so easy, and all it takes is a click or a tweet. Mm-hmm. And you feel like you experience like these positive feelings, being able to engage with others and being able to help one another as much as you can. But at some point your well runs dry, and so you have to kind of say like this,
Yep.
this is where.
You can get caught up in the illusion that resources aren't limited.
Yeah, yeah, and then and I got to the point where I was neglecting my real world. I mean, I spent more time sitting in a chair like this for 18 hours, instead of going for a walk and smelling the air and looking at the world. So.
So tell us about the future, and I guess the sort of the most concrete version of that is what is it? 5 days from now, the Contact Summit.
Yes, next Thursday in New York City. Yeah, so it's a conference that I'm putting on with a media theorist and an author named Douglas Rushkoff, who you may have heard of. He was a professor of mine at the New School during my last semester on my program, and he's been around in this web space since the beginning. And he and all the early internet pioneers in the 90s had this fantabulous view of what this thing was going to do for humanity. And it was going to be this amazing thing where it was going to be about connectivity and about human expression and creativity and growing and love and beauty and all this stuff. And and in fact, where has it really taken us in the last 10 years? I mean, I see a view of the web that, most people aren't looking at. It's all right there. It's hidden in plain sight. Those people are actually there on the web, but most people just see pages and they see, a commercial web and they see marketing. And so, during the course talking about new media and its potential, he was very disgruntled and disillusioned and kind of said, it's all gone to hell. Like there was this great idea, called the web, what if we actually had one? And, because I was so immersed in it and actually having these amazing experiences, I was like, I think you're wrong. That we're there. This kind of social technology thing is just taking off. People are going to experience it. So he contacted me in January this year and said, okay, if you're so confident, why don't we put on an event and prove it? Let's put a stake in the ground and really show people that there's something worth doing here. So it's really it's bringing together. We have 250 people registered, participants from all over the world who have come in, and it's really going to be about. So what is the real potential of a networked world? How do we use these social technologies for positive social change, for human growth and transformation, for really connecting, for exchanging and creating value together, and using this tool as something that actually brings us back to being human, and gets us back into the real world with one another, meeting face to face and actually doing something on the planet, not just getting sucked into the web as, again, a destination where we play in online worlds together or, poke on Facebook and never actually, give one another a hug or have a conversation in the real world. So that's the idea of it. And so we have people from, like I said, around the world who are social entrepreneurs, who are grassroots activists, who are people who are innovating alternative currencies and money and barter networks and creative communities. Really, I mean, I scoured the world for the last 9 months looking for who are the most interesting people out there who are really doing some magical things and envisioning what the future is going to look like. Like if you just kind of pay attention to just in general what's going on in the world, I mean, arguably we're in this kind of huge global transformation, and I think it's very much being driven by information and communication technologies. The power of our computing is increasing exponentially. The cost is going down drastically. Every person on the planet within the next maybe 10 years will have a device that connects them to everybody else. Big institutions are being disintermediated. What does that world look like? That's never existed before. We have no model to really understand what that means when authoritarian regimes can be circumvented and people are able to actually connect and know the truth about what's really going on and to do things with one another. When economic structures are collapsing, when it's so easy to self-organize into a revolution. And it's not just something that's happening over there in the Middle East. I mean, it's happening right now. It's just we're having this net revolution with this Occupy Wall Street that I'm just so curious. We'll be down there next week. It's like I was talking to Douglas yesterday. I said you couldn't have asked for a more perfect timing for a use case. Here's this 250 people around the world who are all about how do we empower people with community tools to allow them to do something interesting together, and here's the world getting angry and saying we are the 99%, that is really creating the real value on the planet. We're being exploited by the 1%. So what are we going to do about it?
I mean, there's as I read the piece you wrote about the Contact Summit, there's a lot about peer-to-peer work, horizontal connecting in it, and maybe potentially ideas about governance in it. It ends with a town hall meeting in which the best ideas are voted on, but it begins with something about provocations. What are those?
Yeah. So, well, instead of just doing a one-way conference, yeah. People are so bored of already because it's like, you have the web. If all we're going to do is sit here and just talk at you, we might as well just record that and put it on the web. You can watch a TED video and be very inspired. That's wonderful. I think, if you're going to bring people in, let's actually have something interactive. So the morning is just going to be 10 5-minute long lightning talks or these kind of provocations from different people within different spheres. So whether it's talking about government 2.0 or this more a democratic potential of how we could be, making decisions for ourselves as a society, to, challenges in learning and education and whatever, all basically everything about society that, we want to improve upon. We can just have these quick talks to kind of frame the conversation, and then the whole day is going to be self-organized kind of ad hoc discussions, and then we're going to put the best ideas forward and vote on them, and then decide to act upon them.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to take a cue from what you just said and open it to the audience. Yeah.
In doing this work, have you given thought, and particularly with the vision you have of where this can go and is going, particularly with regard to political implications and organizations of people who are connected by the web, not by the formal state-run institutions? Have you thought about what happens when the state institutions, the current authorities around the world, get the message, see it? Have you thought about that intersection?
Sure, I think about it every day. Well, like we saw in the Middle East with kind of uprisings in Libya and Tunisia and things, and the government shutting down the web. That is crazy, and it's not like it couldn't happen here. And one of the tracks, or a lot of the people that are going to be coming to our conference next week are hackers and innovators and builders, software developers and hardware who are building, an alternate. What happens when the people become such a powerful force for shaping where things go that it becomes a very real threat. If you shut down the web is such an amazing thing, but it's also so incredibly dangerous. For this Future of Facebook video series that I'm doing, it's a 6-part video series looking at social networking, using it through the lens of Facebook, but really about in general, and looking at different main areas. And so each of these focus videos is on looking through a different lens. So we have society, technology, environment, economy, and politics. And so for the politics video, I was interviewing this guy who's a social network analyst, and we're talking about politics and the force of the people, and he made this comment that just really resonated with me and kind of stuck with me, and he said, wouldn't Stalin have loved Facebook? He said you want to control a people, you want to control a population, all you need to know is who's connected to whom, who's the influencers, who are the hubs of information, and you remove them. And here we are making ourselves so transparent out there that it's scary. At the same time, when everybody's connected and we're all out there and we're all influential in our own little pockets, in our own little ways. I mean, how do you stop that? So, I don't know.
Michael?
I find as I tiptoe into this world, first contact I have with the real crazy trying to sort through the spam and sort through the people that I think are going to harm you in terms of, clearly you both felt that you've broken through on that. What was your experience in the beginning? I feel as a general experience, if you start to tiptoe, they just descend on you, and all of a sudden, your email box will be filled with these. You don't have any relationship. I don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer. I mean, I guess, like I said, in my experience with kind of getting on Twitter, at first it was like, if you have 100 million people you could possibly connect to, who are these people? Like, how do I deal with this? I guess, I started following people that through their blogs, which is where they externalize their personality, and their thoughts, kind of read through what they're thinking about and decide, like, is this a person that I would be interested in connecting to about, whatever the topic is. I mean, many of the people pretty much all the people I'm interacting with are people who are, they have a positive vision for the future, and there's some sort of a change agent, whether it's working for a nonprofit or doing some sort of a startup or thinking about, how can we help each other.
Did you get crazies coming to you that you just had to ignore?
Yeah, but I mean, how hard is it to ignore someone? I mean, you can block them. I had one guy who sent me an email. So after I had gotten real deep into thinking about this hyperconnectivity and this social organism we're building and all this stuff, he like sent me this email. Saying, I'm thinking a lot of, I've developed this model, and I've broken through of this formula of understanding space time, and I'm building a spaceship, and I'd like you to come with me. And I said, at first I was like, you got to be kidding me, but I wrote back and I said, I really feel like I have a lot of work to do here, but thank you.
Molly, you had your hand up?
When you're blogging and revealing all these intimate details of yourself, are you working with a screen name or your real name?
It's my real name. Yeah, it's me. I mean, I'm out there. Okay. So, and so it's like I thought about, like, do I want to create, just a fake name or just a persona and kind of do it that way, which I'm sure would still be a great experience, because again, there are people that I'm connected to online who I consider friends, mentors, colleagues, who I don't know who they really are. I don't know even if they're male or female. I just know their screen name, and I trust them, and we have great conversations. So I'm sure I could have still had a lot of growth just from being a persona, but I mean, I'm sitting here because I used my real name. Like, everything that's happened to me in the last 3 years has been completely through who I've shown online. Like, I haven't sought a job, but opportunities come to me. I mean, I've been given the opportunity. I went to Mumbai this year and to Australia. I was invited to speak at these financial conferences about the future of money because of the stuff that I was blogging about. And I'm like, who am I? I don't know anything about economics. I'm not a finance major, and here I am standing, in front of the heads of the banking industry, through a conference, put on by SWIFT, which is this interbanking messaging network, in Mumbai. And I mean, what the heck do I know? But what does that's the kind of the crazy thing, is what does anyone know anymore? Like the technologies are accelerating so rapidly and making things possible that weren't possible before, that, it's really about what can you imagine at this point, and at least so they can have it in their head to maybe know the wild cards that are coming.
Yeah. Molly, good.
One other quick question. So as this is a psychoanalytic institution or a psychiatric one, are you familiar with any kind of online models for this kind of therapeutic need or analytic feedback on people's revelations? If not, how would you envision something like that? A place where people could go online to get clinical feedback or analytic feedback on their stuff and their stories that they want to tell,
Yeah.
their secrets.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are tons of communities like that already, like different social networks, private online communities, things that institutions create as safe spaces for that kind of interaction to happen. And I think there's a lot of also, mental professionals who do conduct business, online too. Like you can have your Skype video chats, with them one-on-one if you can't get to their office or whatever. Like that is all out there. I thought about that a lot on like a peer-to-peer level, and at first I was really, hesitant because I was like, again, kind of back to what I was saying earlier, like who am I? I'm not qualified to be, talking to a cutter, I don't want them to hurt them. I mean, I want to pass them on to someone who can really help them. But, again, with a lot of the conversations I've had, it's people are just looking for some sort of a support network. So it's not like looking for that next level of having a professional help, but like just having others that they feel like they can relate to. So like, I've envisioned that a lot of, how could we have some sort of an, online spaces where it's safe to go and have this conversation. But I think if you go online now with that intention, like you can, at least that's what I found, you find your tribe. You find those people who you connect to because of whatever it is that your interest area is or whatever it is that, kind of binds you or something that you reveal about yourself, through a blog post that someone else, it resonates with them, and they say, thank you so much for saying that. Like, here's my story. I mean, I had people write in some like comments on my blog, like, I broke down crying, reading this, and it reminded me of this experience I had. And so it's like, I think people are more and more just finding a way to just, put themselves out there and, finding those who they can connect with.
Steve, you had your hand up.
You make the distinction between your life on the web and what you call the real world or reality or real life. And that confuses me because your life on the web is very real. Your immersion is unbelievable. Could you just kind of explain that a little bit?
Well, I mean, it is the world. I mean, I don't really see a distinction. I mean, I think, I can grab my phone right now and tweet and say, guess where I am right now? I'm sitting on a stage and whatever, and I'll have 15 people respond with something. I mean, if we had right now on the screen here, the Twitter back channel, we could have a very interesting experience where this room would become a global a global chat, and I've done that before. I was a teaching assistant for this futures course at Duke University last summer, and we did a lot of that with using Skype video and using Twitter to involve people from around the world in the learning experience with the kids. So. The online offline thing, again, I make the distinction because I think for a lot of people it is still two different things, but for me it's just like it just is. I mean, it's real people on the other end, so it's not like it's not a place, it's just
a connection.
A connection method.
Jim?
It's almost like saying like, the online offline, it's almost like telephone. Like, are you on phone or off phone?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the phone. I mean, we use it. You know what I mean? So it's like.
But it's different than your, quote, real life.
Well,
As I thought you were saying.
it's both.
You made the distinction.
Yeah.
So you labeled them differently. Your online life and your
Real
I
life.
assume your personal life.
Yeah. Well.
Jim, one more. Jim?
I would love to hear you think out loud about something, which is from the peer-to-peer state of mind. What's the value of authority?
I mean, can you
repeat the question?
From a peer-to-peer state of mind, what's the value of authority?
Authority in the sense of people being legitimized to do things on behalf of other people, or expert authority, or that's something I'm confused about. I work in the organizational world where authority is a very important thing. I'm trying to think through this issue about the peer-to-peer network and what place does authority have in it.
Yeah. I think it's, well, again, just for my experience, I think it's more not just taking information at face value, but just questioning things and looking for context. So just because you say you're an expert and I'm supposed to take an action because you said so, well, why? Why? And I think more and more with the online thing, or just being able to provide more and more context about ourselves, about our past, about our relationships, our trust networks, who trusts us and why, what are the experiences we've had with these people, if we've worked in a professional setting together, what did we do, how did we create some sort of value together. When all that stuff kind of becomes out there, and it's all kind of out there now, but it's very scattered. Like our kind of digital footprint is very siloed. You have the thing that your purchases you make on Amazon. Well, Amazon owns that. You have your relationships you have on Facebook, but Facebook owns that. You have so you're on all these different networks, and it's all different. Well, where's the full comprehensive personal identity where I can kind of show you, me and what I'm connected to and what I've experienced, and that is what determines, I guess. I mean, the word authority, I'm not really sure even really what that means, but there's people I respect based on what they've done, their integrity, how their thoughts and actions, how related those two things are,
I think this is one of the questions we'll be coming back to a lot. Don, last comment, and then we're going to take a short break.
Well, it was an association to that. First of all, a comment about Jim's question. I was thinking about it in terms of leadership and followership, and I wonder if part of the essence of peer-to-peer has something to do with authority and leadership, but maybe more to do with followership. One of the things that you talked about were the people that you follow, the people that follow you, and I think that's something that's intriguing in what you're talking about. But you also said something about the use of the tool as a means of being more human. And one of the things that has struck me in the short time that I get here is a number of people that have come into my office and said, well, this is different than the real world. As if there's something that's artificial here as opposed to something that's artificial in the course of daily life that is actually a lot more real here. And as you spoke, I thought you were making this distinction between the real world and a real world. That there are multiple domains in which one can approach what is real, whether it's through Wildcat 2030 or whether it's through an intimate conversation while you're walking through the woods.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break here, but first, Vanessa, I want to thank you so much for this conversation. It's been terrific.